With almost irrefutable evidence that Fortnite's Battle Royale island is a simulation, the foundation of the story has been altered at its very core. Mainly, the big question is no longer what is happening on the island, but rather where is it happening? Is it just in a computer? And if so, where is that computer? Most clues point towards the Save the World universe, and in this episode we'll be tying some more pieces together to confirm this once and for all. And in the last video we touched on how it seems like Agent John Jones is actually able to enter the simulation himself. But with the launch of Season 3, we've been given another huge hint that suggests this. The Marauders, the AI which spawned through the rift and crashed to Earth. While most of the community views them simply as a huge nuisance, I assure you, they are actually an integral piece of the puzzle to this season's storyline. The Marauders, along with Fade, this season's Tier 100 Battle Pass, force us to ask some very interesting questions. And today we'll be covering all this along with revisiting the history of an old friend, Drift. Now, ladies and gentlemen, before we get into it, I need your help. We are so close to 3 million subscribers. Like, depending when you're watching this, might even be there. But regardless, it would mean the world to me if you could hit that subscribe button and help us out. I promise we've got a lot more awesome storyline content coming down the pipe, but now let's get into it. So the main concept that actually ties this entire video together is not a person, but in fact, rifts. We first see rifts at the end of Season 4, when the rocket, powered by Hop Rocks, created multiple rifts around the map, hopping in and out of our dimension and ultimately leaving for the in-between. What was left from the disaster was a giant rift high up in the sky, but there were other rifts all around the map, and they started reacting with what we thought to be other timelines. Dinosaur bones, a Viking ship, eventually an entire desert would all find its way into our Chapter 1 map. But it wasn't just inanimate objects that got rifted. A character named Drift also somehow found his way into Battle Royale. So according to trailers, Drift was actually a real human from California in the same world that we are from. At the end of Season 4, the giant Durburger got rifted out of the Fortnite map and teleported to California, ending up in a desert. Epic took this very seriously and actually put a real Durburger out in the desert for Season 5 promotion. And so the story goes that Drift visited the burger and then spray painted graffiti art on it. As he was doing this, another rift brought the burger and Drift back to the Battle Royale universe, where he met Bright Bomber, Rex, Triceratops, Cuddle Team Leader, and Redline. He then followed the others along on their road trip, ultimately starting a relationship with Bright Bomber. Then in Season X, a female version of Drift from an alternate timeline called Catalyst came to the island after the 0-point sphere explosion. And also at some point in the mix, Drift seemed to gain paranormal powers related to the rifts, which can be seen through his cloak and pickaxe. Oh, and lastly, sort of funny that they added this, but when Chapter 2 Season 2 dropped, there were carvings on a tree behind Bushranger, and among other things, one actually shows that him and Bright Bomber split up. So F to pay respects for the lovely couple, I guess. So, to be honest, the entire background about drifts and rifts being able to interact with our real world doesn't make any sense. And I can't see a way in which it better serves to explain the storyline. Because of this, I'm heavily tempted to toss all of this up to promotion rather than being canon in the storyline. Like, if Drift is from our world, then what about Catalyst? She is supposed to be from an alternate Fortnite timeline. The entire point of Season X was that multiple threads of a similar timeline merged in the Fortnite world, and so there's a timeline where Drift was born as a female. And so what I'm getting at is that trying to fit the real-life world into the Fortnite storyline gets squirrely quick. You've got a simulation inside a world that is in a video game in the real world, and then you want to connect the bottom to the top. It just hurts my brain, and I don't think that's really what Epic was going for. So here's an easier way to look at this. The real-life trailer was used as a promotion to loosely convey that rifts are a link between worlds. So with that, let's just assume Drift is from another dimension within Fortnite, and that there is no canonical connection between everything happening in Fortnite and our real-life world. Got it? Cool. So we know that rifts serve as a connection between various timelines in Battle Royale. But what I'm proposing today is that they also serve to connect the upper level Save the World universe into the Battle Royale simulation. And furthermore, that this is what the developers use to access the simulation themselves. Think of it as their own personal portal down into the Battle Royale world. But there's a lot more to it than that, so let's continue. Now we know that Epic is in the business of selling skins. skins, and it's always important to remember that. Along with the fact that they really don't have anything to gain from promoting old Battle Pass skins. And because of this, it sometimes helps to remember that multiple characters will act to play out one single arc in the storyline. For example, Midas was the big boss in Season 2, but Epic can't keep focusing on him, so they had him pass the torch to Jules. And so just like with these characters, in a way, the same thing has been done for Drift. Drift's general purpose to the bigger storyline was to confirm the existence of the connection between Battle Royale and other worlds. But of course, they can't keep using Drift over and over. So in Season 10, we saw Catalyst added. She wasn't just a cool skin, but also helped to continue the multiple timeline narrative. Now, Catalyst's in-game description is Alter the Paradigm, which I don't think is super helpful for what we're looking at today. But Drift's was Journey into the Unknown and Find Your Way to Victory. Nothing jumps out, but at least it does make reference to the fact that Drift has come from a different universe. But now in Season 3, it seems like the torch of this arc has been passed yet again, and this time to Fade. Now, it's pretty clear that he is a darker variant just from looks alone, but we are given more evidence to go off as well. Fade's in-game description reads, "Far from home, the journey must continue." And this helps to suggest that Fade is also some sort of dimensional hopping entity. Data mining even revealed that Fade's original name, or at least his code name as the game devs were working on him, was Dark Drift. So I think this all fits nicely together in showing that Fade is basically working to resurface the same themes that Drift and Catalyst brought to their respective storylines in Chapter 1. But now for the big piece. Around the Fortnite map, new enemies have been spotted, and they go by the name of the Marauders. Now, most of you who play are already aware of these people, as they are really annoying, but it seems very likely that they exist for part of the storyline. So where to start with these guys? First of all, they spawn from the sky via, you guessed it, a rift. And before you claim that this is just a lazy use of re-assets, I'll have to remind you of one thing you probably hated more than Marauders: brutes. The giant mechs of Season 10 that fell from the sky did not spawn via rifts. They fell to the map more so like a meteor, just spawning way above the build limit out of thin air. And so this leads me to believe that the use of rifts here is very intentional. But moving on from here, the Marauders fall from the sky through these interesting sort of space pods. And honestly, I can't say that they look all that technical. It gives me Rust Lord vibes more so than high-end Vindertech machinery. Beyond that though, I don't have any idea what these are, but if you guys have any ideas, please let me know in the comments. The Marauders spawn to Earth and then essentially go wreaking havoc on the rest of the players around the map. And what's so interesting about these bandits are their characteristics and identity. First and foremost, they can actually be seen dancing together and building little huts as though they're friends. They don't act like your typical bots in a very AI sort of fashion. But again, they actually have real identities as well. Reddit user Toolbox007 and YouTuber PlayStation Grenade have both touched on this, and it's a shocking revelation. In theater mode, if you are able to go behind the masks, you can actually see that they have faces. And these faces belong to none other than Save the World characters. The big guy who wears a deer mask is Kyle, who plays the role of Base and Warden. And there's more than that. The wolf is the Vanguard Southie model. Also, just kind of a cool note, but I think that these guys might also be inspired from Harry Potter. In that series, there's a group of characters that are able to turn into these exact animals, and they're also called Marauders, so it might just be a fun Easter egg. But more importantly, is what are Save the World characters doing in the Battle Royale one? Clearly, this is more than just a coincidence or a reuse of assets. To me, it seems like a pretty big piece of evidence to tie the two worlds together, but it's still rather confusing. And I've come up with two ideas that actually make sense. The first, which we touched on in the last video, is that the owners of the simulation are able to dive into it as they wish and manipulate the world hands-on. If this were the case, then perhaps the Marauders are trained mercenaries sent to crush any sort of resistance by the simulation. Or perhaps not resistance, but I don't know, a revolution maybe set out by Jules or something. And if that is the case, I gotta say, they're doing a really great job, because I sure can't do anything to ever stop them. But in seriousness, this is a pretty compelling argument. In the new Netflix original Midnight Gospel, the main character Clancy owns a multiverse simulator. Through it, he travels through worlds about to have an apocalypse, interviewing some of their residents for his podcast. He basically blasts from his own universe down into these simulated ones, and the Marauders give me a very similar vibe. If you've seen the show, you probably know what I'm talking talking about. And so if this were the case, perhaps it means that whoever owns the computer isn't completely in control of the simulation. And so sometimes they need to go in and do hands-on work to the worlds. But another piece of evidence suggests something else is going on with these guys. Notice how they look. Notice how archaic the pods look. A lot of speculation, including myself, has gone into suggesting that the creators of the simulation are Vendor Tech Labs. But if that was the case, wouldn't the Marauders look a little bit more, I don't know, scientific? It really doesn't make sense that they're wearing these odd masks and their pod is so old and dusty looking. Maybe they're not working for the simulation owners at all. Maybe these guys are entering the simulation from another point in time after the events of Save the World. It seems like the ending to Save the World is the end of the world. And maybe the Marauders follow the ends of Save the World. Perhaps these people digitally downloaded themselves into the simulation as a last-ditch effort to survive. For them, it might not be the real world, but I suppose it's better than dying. So the Marauders' true identity is still unknown, but it seems really odd that they got added this season, and in my opinion, it has to be in relation to the storylines somehow. In a way, they actually kind of remind me of the Enforcers from Season 5. And if you guys are interested in me doing a video on them, I actually kind of would like to, because they didn't really have a lot of story. But what seems very likely is that the Marauders are from the Save the World universe, and that this is also where Fade is from. Fade's cosmetic includes a flower for a back bling, along with a glider that looks very similar to not only Rift, but also the butterfly we saw in Season 6's event. Fade is heavily tied to Rifts, and with his background being about coming from another place, maybe he too is from the Save the World universe. Maybe him, Catalyst, and even Drift were all sent here from that same place. Maybe as a test experiment to see what humans do inside the simulation. Against their own will, that's hard to say. This would help to explain why they all seem to have gotten powers though. Maybe humans react differently inside here, or perhaps they were programmed to be given additional powers. All of this is definitely in the back burner to the main line of what is happening this season, but I think it's still trying to tell us something. It's giving us more information as to the connection between Save the World and the simulation, and I really hope that Epic gives us more here. In the meantime, however, we're going to need to wait. And one great way to do so is by watching my second channel, Nifty Smith. We're currently aiming to hit 50,000 subscribers, and if you could go check it out and subscribe down below, it would mean a lot. Thanks so much for watching, and as always, peace out, you frickin' nerds.